So we started to clear these rooms, and a lot of people had left their TV on. And you're starting to go into these rooms that have all, country western wear. And you're like, okay, these people are at the concert. Not to get into political sides or anything else, but, it's a country concert, festival, probably a lot more leaning on the right side, watching Fox News or whatever news channel. And so I kept seeing Fox News on all of these TVs. And then it started out was like 5 reported dead. And then you start to go up the floors as you're clearing.
This isn't how you're learning about.
We're starting to get more. All right. It's at 11. All right. Wow. 11, and then we're going up, and, now we're, at 15, and it's just climbing. And then obviously we didn't even understand that we were at the number we were at even that morning.
Yeah.
We knew it was bad, but we didn't really have an appreciation for how bad it was.
Okay. So you get home. Do you lay down?
Welcome to the Attorneys on Accident podcast with your host, Joe Worth and Ash Blackburn. We are here with our very special guest, Levi Hancock. Thank you for coming on the show, Levi.
Thank you.
Levi has lived a career that most will only see in movies. I think that's not embellishment or exaggeration. Levi has worked multiple roles within the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, including detective. You've been undercover, my understanding, a bike gang, correct?
You work biker gangs? Mm-hmm.
You've also worked in other divisions such as?
Criminal intelligence, special investigations.
Yeah, and Levi he played a pivotal role in the October 1 Las Vegas shooting, and we're going to hear about that toward the end of the podcast. You're going to want to stick around, but let's start with what you just did recently with Netflix. There was a documentary that they reached out to you for.
Yeah, we just completed a Netflix filming documentary. It's the second one that I've done. It should be released sometime in 2026. This one, I think, the first one I did was a great documentary. I think it portrayed a great view for the victim's perspective.
What was it called?
11 minutes. Mm-hmm. The second one, I don't know what the title's going to be, but like I said, it'll be out in 2026. And my understanding, it's going to be geared more from the law enforcement perspective on the response to the incident.
Well, before we go into that, and we will get to that, Ash and I want our listeners and our viewers to come to know who you are. Who is Levi Hancock? How did you get to this point in life where you recently retired? How many years did you put in?
Just short of 25 years.
And you're
24 years, 9 months.
Wow. And you've already, you didn't last very long in the retired world, correct?
All of 6 days.
6 days before you.
Yeah, it was planned that way.
Either you made your wife crazy or you were going crazy.
Yeah, I just knew that I was not going to just sit at home and do nothing. I love golf, but I don't love it that much.
Yeah. Understood. And so you lasted 6 days, came out of retirement, and now you are currently assistant director of security for a large strip casino?
That's correct. Yes, for a resort here in town.
And how are you finding that so far?
It's been a great transition. I really enjoyed it. The company that I'm working for is second to none. They're a tremendous company. They're very engaged with their employees. The culture within the company is just absolutely amazing. And that's why I really made that decision to go with this particular company. It was great decision for me.
So now, we're starting sort of where you're at right now. Let's go back to the beginning. And I actually want to start with when you got married, because unlike a lot of people, you got married very late in life. I think you were 18. Is that right?
Yeah, very late. Yeah,
your wife was super old. She was 17.
Yeah, all of 17.
Okay.
What drove that decision?
The right thing to do. The right thing to do. I was not a local kid. Moved here when I was a freshman in high school.
Dad was in the military?
He was former military, and then I think he just kind of liked the idea of continuing to move around every year. So like my sisters went to a different high school every year, which obviously presents its challenges. We moved to Las Vegas in the late 80s, where I attended Bonanza High School as a freshman.
What a time in Las Vegas.
It was great.
Yeah?
It was.
What was Vegas like in the 80s?
A lot more sparse than what it is now. I remember we moved into the lakes, and it was a 2-lane road, Sahara, that was going up to the lakes. And when it rained, it would wash out. So it was a great time. But attended Bonanza High School. My father decided that he wanted to move to New Jersey after my freshman year. So my sophomore year was spent in New Jersey, and then he decided he wanted to move back. So we came back to Las Vegas, and then I reattended Bonanza for a junior and senior year. Got married very young. We had found out that she was pregnant, and we just made the determination and that it was the right thing to do. And thank God, because we had 4 amazing, beautiful children. Yeah.
And I got to imagine being a young father, going into law enforcement, you were confronted with problems, issues that your single colleagues didn't face. That must have been difficult, having such a big family and being that young.
Yeah. So, as we started out, we were kids raising kids, and we were trying to figure out, what our direction was. And I had a couple of great jobs, but that's all they really were, was jobs. They were just fulfilling a need at that point in time. Several years later, I was actually around 26 years old. We had 3 kids at that point, and a 4th on the way. I started to look at, long-term perspective, right? Where am I going? What am I doing? And that's when I became involved in testing for Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department.
Was there a lead up to that? Something that called to you about being a police officer, or a moment?
Absolutely. I think it's something that always kind of resonated in the back of my mind. But I had always had positions where, leading up to that, where one, I'm taking care of a family, right? And I wasn't really looking at the long-term goal, at that age. I was just fulfilling the need that I needed to provide for my family.
Backs against the wall.
Yeah, absolutely. At one point in time, I was working 2 full-time jobs, just burning the candle to try and make things work. And, as I started to get a little bit older, kids are, again, we had 3, we had a 4th that was coming, started to look at that, and I'm like, okay, where am I going? And I had always had an interest in law enforcement, but in my professional life at that point, I was doing fairly well. It was going to be a significant pay cut for me to step into the law enforcement realm. But it was something that I had always been interested in. At that point in time, we had some friends of ours that we went to church with, said he actually was a cop, and he said, hey, why don't you come do a ride along with me?
I was going to say,
yeah.
Was it that's what hooked you?
Absolutely. I went on that first ride along. I was immediately hooked, just from the aspect of, we're going out, we're seeing people at their absolute worst, and you're helping them. And then lo and behold, that night, we ended up getting in a foot pursuit.
You chased him?
Yeah, we did. And, he had the discussion with me. Before we started the ride along, he said, hey, listen, I need to know where you're at all times. If I get in a foot pursuit, are you going to be with me, or are you going to be in the car? Either decision you make is fine. And I'm like, no, I'm going to go with you. So anyway, we got involved in a foot pursuit, and it was raining. And so we get out of the car, this guy takes off running. And so, of course, I'm in a dead sprint. Well, I didn't know what happened is he had slipped with the rainwater. He slipped on the ground. The officer did.
Jeez.
And so he was now behind me, like maybe 20 yards behind me. And I'm catching up to this guy. Of course, I'm not wearing a gun belt. I did have my vest on.
Dove and tackled him.
And I did. It was right in front of the Excalibur.
You really did?
He was a carjacking suspect, and he literally was running across the front of the valet. And I thought this officer was right there with me, and he was shortly behind, but I ended up tackling the guy right in front of the valet.
How old are you?
26 years old. 25 years old. Yeah. So I tackle this guy, and again, I don't have any of the tools that the officers, do. I tackle this guy and, start to kind of hold him down, and, I didn't know what to do with him. So I start to kind of,
like a dog that, a car. I don't know.
Fortunately, he didn't have any weapons or anything, but I start to stand him up And then all of a sudden, this officer comes out of nowhere, and he tackles him again, takes him to the ground. And that was, as we finished, that was a very tail end of our the graveyard shift that we worked. And I remember I went home, and the pants I were wearing were, not necessarily ripped, but they were all kind of messed up, and I had, mud and stuff on my knees. And my ex-wife, my wife at the time, she was like, "What in the hell happened?" Yeah, like I'm hooked. Yeah. And that's when the process began for me.
They gave you that first line of cocaine for free, and you're
absolutely, yeah.
Wow. Little did you know that was a plant, and that was that cop's friend,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it got me. It got me. Yeah, so I immediately started to put my interest in with the department, and you did an interest card at that point, and you send it in, and they contact you when they're doing the testing process, and spent a better part of a year going through that testing process, and then finally got an offer to join the department.
What were the first couple of years of like being a police officer?
It's definitely a lot of learning, right? You go through an academy, which is right around 6 months. It's very intensive, right? Back then there was a lot of physical fitness aspect to it, a lot of running, a lot of physical training. But it's very knowledge based too. It's the equivalent of being in college.
Right.
You're coming from all walks of life, and you're trying to give them a basic understanding of criminal law, and making sure that by the time they graduate the academy, that they're, once they go out onto the streets, that they are educated enough to make those decisions.
I've heard a criticism that cops should have to have a 4-year degree. What are your thoughts on that? Do you have a take?
I don't know about a 4-year degree, maybe an associate's for sure. Yeah, I don't know about a 4-year degree. From my perspective, especially going through the academy and what you get out of just even 6 months. Again, it's very intensive.
Learning on the job.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you said back then, is it easier now? Have they dropped a lot of the physical requirements?
No, I don't think that it's easier now.
No,
I don't think that it's easier now. It is, my understanding, again, I did not work in the academy. You would hear things throughout the department. My understanding is it's more learning based than it is physical training now. So when I went through, the way they described it, it was a very paramilitary academy. And that was even in the little handbook that they give you. These are the expectations going into it. But my understanding, it's more of a learning environment equivalent of being in college.
Okay.
With some physical training attached to it.
So you get in there, you're a police officer, you're ambitious?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think what young police officer isn't.
What was your goal when you got there?
Just to learn as much as possible.
But did you have a specific role within the police department that you were coveting?
Well, I didn't initially. I really didn't know. But as I started to kind of get into the first couple of years, homicide was always started kind of present itself. I'm like, oh, that's definitely the direction I wanted to go. So it was about a year or two into it that I'm like, okay, that's the direction I would like to go, become a homicide detective. I think when you look at the pinnacle of being in an investigative role, that's it, right? On the homicide side of things. So that turned out to kind of be my goal. And with that in mind, you don't just go from being a patrol officer to homicide, right? You have to build your skill set. So I started to kind of look out there and see where I could kind of get that introduction into, building my resume as far as a detective goes and gaining some experience. And about 5 years in, I tested for a unit called Special Investigations.
Before we go too far down the road of detective, in terms of being a patrol officer, one thing that I wanted to ask you, because you said you're 51 now.
I am.
And so don't tell.
Yeah.
But you, otherwise. Exactly. You don't look 51. But you were also a cop at 26, 27 and a patrol cop. And I feel like we're living in a time where being a cop is so much more political than I think it was, but maybe I have that wrong. Have you felt the evolution of public perception of being a cop, especially a patrol officer?
Oh, absolutely. Especially with the evolution of social media.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, social media drives everything, and somebody can put something up that, isn't necessarily accurate, and now you all have the attention of thousands of people making judgment off of one specific video that you really
Without
don't have the full context.
Well, like it or not, it lays down a massive impression, right? That's how people shape and form their opinions, because let's be honest, that's the lowest, easiest way to get information and news, and it's sensationalized, and it's got, captions that are intended to get you to look at it. So you're up against all these things that just, no one's going to sit down and watch a documentary for 14 hours on like what it's really like to be a cop, right? From a cop's perspective.
Right. Absolutely.
So
how have you dealt with that?
It doesn't bother me. I think people that take the time to educate themselves and look at any type of career path. Listen, there are great attorneys and there are terrible attorneys
who abuse the system.
Just because someone is a police officer doesn't mean that they're absolutely great, right? We're all human beings. We make mistakes, and we have our own personalities. We act differently. But that goes with any field, great doctors, bad doctors.
Yes. So I would just say, I would push back a little bit in the sense that, do you feel the police department, let's just say Las Vegas, do they work to shape that perception, to push back, to help people understand, like, no, we want to have the best candidates. We want to have the top individuals with character. Because
absolutely,
I feel like it's difficult because now people are like, well, I would never want to be a cop because you're seeing all the...
I can't choose what cop comes to my door, but I can choose what lawyer
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, being that I did 25 years with LVMPD, they are on the forefront of making sure we have the best product. When I say product, they're the best officers that are coming out of the academy, that they're getting consistent training that's up to date. They are definitely second to none. And because of some of the roles that I've had in my law enforcement career, I've had the opportunity to go around the country and teach other agencies and other SWAT teams. And I'm going to tell you, there is nobody that I have come across that compares to our agency here.
Really?
Absolutely. Hands down. There is nobody. Yeah. So they do a very great job. And I think they're also very transparent too. I think a lot of things that happen in the media, people are very quick to rush to judgment based off of, again, a short clip without context. Our agency, I believe, and I still say our agency because I still feel like a part of them. I think they do a phenomenal job in being transparent as quickly as they possibly can, because then that starts to mitigate some of, people's tensions.
Mm-hmm. What do you associate with kind of keeping ahead of the times and making sure that they're leading the charge in education?
It's the leadership. It's the person sitting in that chair driving the agency, and that comes down to the sheriff and what their goals are. Our current sheriff has done a phenomenal job, and I hope he does get reelected. And all the sheriffs that I've had the opportunity to work for have done a great job. But I think, somewhere midway through my career, I definitely saw a change within the agency, that they started to be very, much more progressive in that aspect of providing training for the officers. And the facilities that they have now, you used to have to attend this training every year. It's an advanced officer training. And it was, they would have a little training area outside, basically kind of in a parking lot, and they'd throw some scenarios together and talk about your, decision making and things like that. And now they have a facility that's a warehouse that basically has an entire city that is built inside the warehouse where they can put these scenarios on. It's called the Jetty. And it's open to all law enforcement in Southern Nevada. And they have a casino in there. They have a nightclub in there. They have literally full-size homes, so you can really enact reality-based training for building those scenarios and building confidence for those officers that are going into those environments.
Is Las Vegas a unique place to be a patrol officer?
I think Las Vegas is just a unique place.
Period.
Let's be real. There is nothing like us.
Yeah.
Because of what is on that strip and what is encompassed in the totality of in this town. We're very unique. This town never stops.
You're right. If you pause, we are a fascinating, not just on the national, like worldwide, like when you travel and you just tell people you're from Las Vegas, first of all, It can be in Africa. It doesn't matter. They all know Las Vegas.
Everybody knows it. Absolutely.
It's
But I have to imagine that it requires different training, right?
It does. I mean, really, the whole basis of law enforcement training really isn't different. I mean, as far as a problem that's presented to you, how you handle it is really not that much different if it's in a casino or if it's in a residence. So, but it's very unique in the challenges that it presents just because of everything that we have here.
Right. People's
Down
access to alcohol, access to drugs.
I mean, you go down any strip at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and there's people that they're still down there partying, having a good time. In most cities and towns in the country, and even in the world, what time do things shut down?
9.
yeah.
8.
Yeah, it depends on where you're at, right?
Yeah.
Maybe even earlier. So, yeah, I mean, it's just a constant being.
Speaking of Vegas, 24/7 town, nightlife, you worked in an undercover capacity in some form or another. Strip clubs?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So biker gang, strip club.
Yeah. So from my first detective role that I went into, I worked special investigations. And what we did on that particular unit is we kind of ensured compliance when it came to regulated and privileged business licenses. So when you imagine a regulated privileged business license, obviously any business can just get a normal business license. But when you start talking about gaming, you start talking about alcohol, you start talking about adult clubs, those are regulated and privileged licenses. So our role was to go out and ensure that they were doing what it was that they were supposed to be doing and acting accordingly. And a lot of that involved working in an undercover capacity. You would go in, act as a patron, just kind of observe things, try and get, a solicitation, purchase narcotics, things of that nature, just to kind of see how the business was running. And then we would take that, build a case on it, report those things to the city and the county.
What is that like working undercover?
I enjoyed it. It was fun. You get to assume kind of a different role than who you are. I really did. I enjoyed it for a short while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to be, it's almost like actors. They talk about the benefit of acting is you get to live all these different lives without the consequences.
Right. Yeah.
But I do want to ask you, there must have been consequences in it spilling over into your personal life, your family life. I mean, in all those roles, was there anything where nobody warned you about the difficulties psychologically or relationally that it was going to cause that you wish they'd have warned you about?
Yeah, that's a very deep question. And that definitely presented itself later on in my career. I don't think you're ever fully prepared as a law enforcement officer for some of the things that you see. And I should go back and not say I don't think. You are not prepared for some of the things that you encounter and some of the things that you see on a daily basis. I once heard a statistic from a gentleman that was putting on a course that I attended, and he made a statement. He said, the average human being goes through anywhere from 5 to 8 traumatic events in their life. That event could be death of a loved one, could be a car accident. You could observe something that happened that's traumatic. The average law enforcement officer goes through 800.
800?
Yes. Average law enforcement officer over the basis of a, 20, 25.
Yeah, so I shouldn't have hesitated when I was asking about consequences. There's absolutely going to be.
Yeah, so when you think about that, I mean, what for a normal human being that experiences 5 to 8, dealing with traumatic events, how does that translate just a normal citizen, right? People struggle with that. There's no doubt. You look at a law enforcement perspective of it, magnify or, multiply that by whatever around that, and you get to that high of a number, it's definitely going to take its toll. I will say that I underestimated that throughout my career, and then finally got to a point where I needed to address it. What I will say, when I first hired on, in the early 2000s. I hired on with Metro in 2001. Back then, it was still kind of a taboo topic, right? You didn't talk about mental health.
Right.
It's
so different today.
And it's transitioned tremendously to where we're at now. And our department, again, I'm saying our department because I'm still
You're
there.
good. We'll pretend.
I feel like I'm still there. I'll always be a part of it. But Las Vegas Metro has done an amazing job over the past years recently to improve the perception on mental health. Not just that, but providing resources. The mental health program that they have now is absolutely amazing. I wish they would have had it when I hired on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But they've taken tremendous strides to really improve on that and educate people.
What would you say to a young officer about how to keep your humanity through all of that?
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to utilize the resources that are there.
Take advantage.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Just merely going and talking to somebody about something that you saw happen definitely helps you deal and contend with that.
Has it affected your ability to hold on to humanity?
No. I think at one point it did. There's no doubt about it. And I kind of got to a juncture in my life, and I'm sure we'll probably talk about it a little bit later, deeper into my career with some of the things that I experienced. There was a realization for me that, okay, I got to talk to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you see it played out in movies, usually these gang movies, right, where at the end of them being undercover for 10, 20 years, living this double life, the wife and the kids suffering, the friendship suffering, the individual suffering, they'll kind of paint this picture at the end where they give them a plaque, shake their hand, and the person's just kind of sitting there staring, and you're kind of feeling what they're feeling, this weight of,
What did it take from you?
at what cost, right? At what cost? Have you had those moments, or has this always been your calling to do this sort of thing and you don't necessarily get stuck there?
This was definitely my calling. There's no doubt. Like I said, I think I definitely underestimated the emotional and mental toll that it would take on me. And obviously learning lessons as you grow in life, and utilizing those resources kind of helped me at definitely pivotal points in my career.
I want to know what you do, what sort of hacks or tricks or things that you've come to realize, like, okay, this is how I keep going. This is how I get through, because I know you've got this thirst for always improving yourself, but then challenges. You mentioned to me, you're all about challenging yourself. What does that mean?
Not being stagnant, right? I think we are very comfortable at times, right? We get into a position, it's easy, we can sit back on our heels and kind of just go through cruise control and coast through it. But for me, I've always needed to be in a position where I needed that challenge. And I always found that once I kind of got into a position, whatever role that was, and even being as a young detective, that, a year or two into it, I'm like, okay, I've got a grasp on that. What's next? What's next? I wanted to continue to kind of challenge myself in that aspect.
Do you feel like it's healthy and that it's not just staying busy, not letting yourself be still and calm to kind of, all the stuff maybe you need to be hearing and working on? Like, do you feel like you're in a healthy place where you have peace too? And
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. But like I said, I just, throughout my career, I just kept okay, what's the next step? What's the next challenge for me? I was never one to go into a unit and be like, okay, I'm good, I'm satisfied. I eventually found that with SWAT, but that was different because of the daily challenges that you're presented. It's a whole different dynamic.
So how did that serve you, that mindset? How did that serve you when you wanted to advance and realize, oh, you know what? SWAT's kind of the top of where I can go within my field.
Well, I think we got to take a step back and kind of talk about how I got into that. I was very dead set on going to homicide. Again, that's the pinnacle when you're talking about an investigative role as a detective. And that was my goal. And then as I was working in undercover biker gangs, I was attending a conference in San Diego, and I met a gentleman by the name of Bob Montez. And he was a SWAT officer back here in Las Vegas. It was interesting as to why he was necessarily at a biker conference, but the team had actually paid for him to go down there and kind of further their education on biker gangs. I didn't know who he was, but I knew that he worked for the agency and was on the SWAT team. So I introduced myself, and we hit it off. And he kind of opened my eyes to the aspect of that being a possibility. And it's not that I didn't think it was a possibility. I just, like I had said before, I didn't have a military background. I wasn't necessarily a gun nut. And sometimes people often associate that with being a SWAT officer. When you look at kind of the stereotype.
You broke it a little bit.
Of officers. And, he kind of opened it up. He actually said, we ended up riding home together in his car coming back to Las Vegas. And, he said to me, he goes, have you ever thought about coming to SWAT? And I was like, no.
What do you think he saw in you that associated in his mind
I don't know.
as a SWAT officer?
I don't know.
Oh, stop it. Come on.
I don't know.
It.
And, during the conversation, I even said, I'm like, I'm not former military. I don't have what I perceive to be what they're looking for. And, he made a comment to me. He's like, it's not about all those things that you see. It's what's between your ears.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the things that happen in SWAT it's a chess match.
Right. It's quick.
It's cerebral.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Making the right decision at the right time.
Game, and sometimes thinking very quickly to make a decision, and sometimes we have a little bit more time. But you think about the calls that SWAT often deals with, dealing with somebody that's in a crisis and trying to resolve that in a peaceful manner. It's like, okay, we're always thinking 3 steps ahead of how we're going to accomplish this mission.
So what did Bob do, or what did he say?
So in our drive back, he said, hey, have you ever thought about this? And quite frankly, no, I didn't think that I fit the mold. And he goes, why don't you just come out and, take a look at it? And I'm like, okay, what does that entail? He goes, well, we have this program where, as a law enforcement officer, you're on the agency, you can sign up to come out and be a role player. So in essence, when the SWAT team is doing training, they need people to role play and act as bad guys. He goes, it'll kind of open you up to the tactics, get introduced to the team a little bit.
Do you still have your biker beard?
Yeah. And I literally, yeah.
So you look like a bad guy out there?
Yeah, I did.
Did you have all the tattoos?
They had started at that.
They were coming.
Yeah. One by one, they had started. But I actually had long hair at the time. We talk about it. He's like, who's a surfer dude? Yeah.
We need a photo of this.
Definitely different transitions in my career, kind of from, the party look to the surfer look to the biker look. So yeah, he just kind of opened me up to the possibility. He said, hey, why don't you come out, give it a try, see if you like it. And I remember the first time I went out and acted as a role player for the team, and I was blown away at the level of professionalism and the tactics and everything else.
Sorry, I'm seeing a pattern. Like, you just need a ride along and then you're hooked. Like,
yeah.
In there.
Are you guys doing ride-alongs at the firm?
but so you're going to be an attorney on accident.
Yeah, no doubt. So, he kind of opened my eyes to it. And I went out that first time and like I said, I was absolutely blown away. And I remember walking away from that going, this is amazing. Yeah, this is amazing.
What was it?
What was interesting was the SWAT tests once a year. And it's a pretty intensive test.
Yeah, I mean, our listeners want to know, how hard is it? Like, I mean, is this like getting to Yale, Harvard?
There's a statistic that they say 0.1% of law enforcement officers are able to make it into a SWAT unit.
Yeah.
Do the math, Ash.
I cannot. But you said earlier that like people think of SWAT as gun nuts. I think of SWAT as SEALs, right? Like I'm going into a very particular mission.
Or Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
Yeah, those guys are on a different level.
Just one rung.
Those guys are on a
higher
different level. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. It is definitely.
But similar vibration, right?
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
Your hero support.
It is very, very intense. It is nothing to take lightly. So much so that I really kind of underestimated it a little bit. So I started to go out and role play, and in about 2 months later was the SWAT test. Like I said, the test is very intensive, physical fitness, shooting. You go into basically a panel type interview that's very intense. And if you're lucky enough, then you get selected. And they don't, back then they didn't take but maybe one person, maybe two. And that was just based off of attrition, because back then when I tested, it was guys would go to SWAT and they'd stay there for.
Well, you make more money. You've got the prestige.
You do make more money, and it's one of those positions that people just love, right? It's a calling for people, and they go there and they stay there for the remainder of their career. So you don't get the normal turnaround that you would get in other detective bureaus.
So did you get it first try?
Well, so first try. So again, it just started going out and role playing. The test was about 2 months after that. And before the test, they do a walkthrough up at the range. And so I showed up to the walkthrough. I had put my name in and go to the walkthrough. And I remember going back to my car and I was like, okay, I have not put in the effort that I needed to do to
you knew it
test
deep down.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, again, I had already put my name in. But it became very clear that I had not done what I needed to do to prepare myself.
Physically?
From every aspect.
Okay.
Now, don't get me wrong. I could have absolutely passed the shooting, passed the physical fitness portion, but I probably would have been middle of the field somewhere. And to me, that's not acceptable.
Well, middle of the field meaning you didn't make it.
Yeah, you probably
they only take the top.
So what happens is you go through the testing process, you go through the oral board interview, and then everything is ranked. So if 30 people put in, they'll rank it. Back then they would rank everybody. All right, 1 through 30. So what's your opportunity of getting in if you're number 15? And they take one. Right. So as I kind of had that realization that, okay, I have not done what I needed to do to prepare myself to be number one, I withdrew from the list.
Voluntarily?
I did. Yep. I withdrew because I know I hadn't put the effort in. It was very new to me, right? This is fresh a couple months later after I kind of make this pivotal decision. And then I just made the call to go, I'm going to do everything I can for the next year. I am going to bust my ass.
A year. Most people can't.
What did that mean study-wise?
It means training like crazy. It means being out there, in a role-playing capacity. The role-playing capacity, yes, you go out there and you act as a bad guy for the team to execute their missions, but it also gives you the ability to learn the tactics. You see the tactics firsthand as they're doing them.
Against you.
Right. Absolutely. Right. The maneuverings and everything else. But it also affords them an opportunity to get to know you, and that's very important because you're going to spend more time with somebody that is your SWAT brother than you're probably going to spend with your family. So it's very important for them to understand that, hey,
it's a relationship.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is.
I want to put that in perspective because you said SEALs are on another level, but at the same time, like, worst thing happens in Las Vegas that could happen and SWAT's on it, right?
Yeah, we are the last line of defense for this valley.
Yeah.
And they're calling you up just to give people like a smattering of like the different calls you can be called up for. Like, what are they for? What kind of emergencies? Tell me all the ones.
So, on a daily basis, we're serving a lot of search warrants. That's kind of primarily what our role is. So detectives do an investigation. They get a judge to sign off on a search warrant. It gets presented to us.
And this is for murder.
It's for anything. It could be for narcotics. It could be for murder, whatever the situation is.
Gang activity.
Gang activity.
Are those mostly forcible entry, or you're just knocking and they're letting you in?
It depends. It really depends. There's definitely been a transition over the past couple of years as to how SWAT conducts their tactics.
You're more polite now, you knock twice.
We ask nicely. So a lot of the tactics utilized now, we don't necessarily utilize a forced entry. For search warrants, we look for a lot of compliance. We'll pull up, make our presence known, look for them to come out, and then we end up going in and searching the premise. So we do a lot of search warrants. And then we have a lot of tactical missions, what were called tactical missions. And those would be anywhere from a suicidal person that's going to jump off of a bridge or, a parking garage, or a barricaded subject. Obviously somebody's committed a crime and they barricaded inside of an apartment, a vehicle, or residence. And it's our job to go out there, provide negotiations with them, and then look at tactical options to resolve the situation. And then what we really train for is the Super Bowl. And when you look at the Super Bowl for a SWAT team, it is hostage rescue missions. Because there are those incidents that people take their family members hostage, or something happens in a situation where somebody gets held hostage. And those things do happen. They do happen. That is a very small sliver of it, but that is what we train for. If we're always training at that level, then we're more than prepared to execute all the other missions.
What part of what you just said does Hollywood get right? That you're like, no, that's actually what we experience or we feel, like the emotional side. What do they get right? What do they get wrong?
I don't watch a lot of the police shows.
You're not
because you don't watch the lawyer shows, so we're like,
yeah, exactly.
Law and Order. Yeah.
Honestly, I don't even watch any of those. The only
Bad Boys too.
Yeah, but you've seen Bad Boys.
Yeah, they're so far off base.
Oh,
they're so far off base, and I'm sure, like you guys said, even when you look at attorney shows,
right?
No, come on.
They take our most fascinating day.
Yeah.
Or interesting day, but I have to imagine you've got some stories in there though, where every time you tell it, people are like jaw drop.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stories. There's a lot of terrible stories. You see the worst of the worst. The day-to-day normal operations for us when I was on the team was, if we didn't have a search warrant or something to go execute, you're at the range, you're training, you're honing your skill set. But we always trained for that, what we deem as the Super Bowls, that hostage rescue mission. On average, there's been years where we've had maybe 10 of those a year.
Oh,
and then there's been years where you only have maybe 3.
Which one sticks out in your mind though? You now have an opportunity to be able to talk about it, which is one hostage situation where you'll never forget it. And why?
There's not one.
I was about to say, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, and the unfortunate thing, like I kind of just alluded to, was you don't prepare yourself for a lot of things that you're gonna come across, right? So there's a lot of those, and I think there's a lot of very successful missions too. But sometimes the unfortunate reality is, if police officers respond to a situation where they believe a hostage situation is happening, by the time all of the progression happens and by the time we get called out, if there's no response from people inside, or, there's oftentimes everybody's dead. It's too late.
We talked about the mental health scenario of just being a patrol officer. Do you feel like when you went into SWAT, that was another layer of
definitely
care that you had to take for yourself?
Yeah. For sure. Well, I didn't realize it, honestly. I thought I was this tough, bad dude. I could handle anything. And you're not prepared for some of that stuff. And, as a law enforcement officer, you can walk in and see the most horrific things as well, as far as just from a patrol officer standpoint. Just because you're in SWAT doesn't necessarily compound it. I think the type of calls that you respond to are probably more so on that level. But unfortunately you do get to see the worst of the worst. And, like I said, I don't think I was mentally prepared for it, because there were some pivotal things that happened throughout my career, and especially in SWAT, after specific missions that we had, that were very difficult to deal with.
Share with us one moment where it was a positive outcome and you got to have that feeling when you went home of, but for me being in that situation, that person could have died or could have been trapped.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Listen, don't just from what I just said, don't take away from that everything that we went on was just horrific. It wasn't. We had, I mean, I've probably been on well over 100 hostage rescue missions when I look back at my career.
Geez, I wouldn't even think it happens that frequently.
Yes, it does.
That's crazy.
It really does. You know, a lot of them result in, you know, like what we just talked about, but there are so many just great stories where
There's one that sticks out.
we effected a rescue and otherwise somebody would have died. There's no doubt. I mean, you know, I was a month into my SWAT career. And we got a call out. It was, turned out to be, I'm trying to remember the time that it was. Turned out to be, I believe it was about 16 hours, the call out. It's a long time, right? I mean, you respond to a call, you're in kit, you know, our kits are not light. They definitely lightened up as technology has helped us in that aspect of things.
Heavy, hot.
Yeah, it's hot. It's in the middle of summer, you know. It was literally a month into my SWAT career. Well, we went on a call. It was a hostage rescue. Basically, it was a sexual assault suspect that had been kind of a predator in the area. And he saw an opportunity with a female in an apartment and actually went up into that apartment, held her hostage. Patrol responded. As they responded, because somebody saw him dragging her back into her apartment, he actually engages them in a gunfight. He retreats back into the apartment, and at that point, obviously, we're summoned, and we show up. We start going through the motions of things. Our team is very progressive, and I don't want to say that I'm not saying that we're better than others, but we have been very progressive on the explosive breaching things, on this as far as tactics go. So we get there, we set up numerous explosive breaches on this apartment. We go through the negotiations well into the night, well into the morning. The SWAT commander makes a determination like, hey, it's time. We're not going to get to a resolution with this guy. He had fired, you know, a couple of rounds throughout the night. They knew that she was still alive, but we were getting to that point where they really felt that her life was in imminent jeopardy and that a decision needed to be made. So he gave us the authorization for a crisis entry, and, you know, team hits the button, explosive breaches go off. We go up the stairs and go in, and we ended up saving that woman's life. Unfortunately, the suspect didn't make it out, but we ended up saving that woman's life. There's a lot of those stories. You know, I think oftentimes I find myself kind of remembering all the negative ones, but there's a ton of great stories, you know. Yeah, it was amazing.
I'm going to pull a string here. Okay.
Yeah,
so
go
I
ahead.
apologize already.
Yep.
One thing that I always think about officers and anybody that's in, you know, the line of duty that you're in is, how do you reconcile being a dad of 4 kids and doing this job?
Whew.
4 daughters, right?
3 daughters, one son. Mm-hmm. If you ask my kids, they would probably say that they did the job with me, because there's such dedication getting into a unit like that. If you don't have the family support, you're not going to make it there.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we've actually had, officers come up to the team, realize, hey, this is way too much for me. And they don't have the family support, and they're like, I'm out. And that's fine. I mean, listen, there's nothing more important than family. There's no job out there that is more important than family. So, but, you know, from that aspect of things, because you're on call all the time, I mean, you get dragged out. It doesn't matter when, you know, criminals don't take days off. They don't take holidays off.
They don't care if it's your daughters.
Absolutely. I mean, my kids always had the ongoing joke. There's like, all right, it's Father's Day. We know you're going to get called out. So, so I think in that aspect of things, they tend to live it with you.
Yeah.
You know.
Does it make you also think about the world that they're growing up in a different way?
Of course. How can you not? You become a little jaded, right? I don't want to say that I was overprotective of my kids, but I was definitely protective. I think the benefit to that, raising 4 children is that, I think they like to say that their dad was on the SWAT team. And it definitely probably scared some boys off.
There we go.
With my daughters.
You didn't have to bring the guns out. They knew.
Yeah. If it doesn't, you're like, marry my daughter. Yeah. You got my respect. That doesn't scare you.
Yeah. I just had to say, hey, you know what I do for a living, right? Right.
So I have to imagine, Levi, I hope to imagine that you do give yourself permission to pause, to reflect on a life and a career where you've made the ultimate difference, like saving lives, right?
Sure.
We all talk about wanting to make a difference in our community or at work, but do you ever have those moments where you just really think, wow, I've lived an amazing or interesting life in the sense that I get to protect and save people, and have somebody, who would have otherwise lost a mom or a brother or a sister, like you.
Yeah.
That's so heavy.
Absolutely. There were a lot of those missions that we were on that things could have ended very differently had we not done what we did. How can you not be proud of that?
Yeah,
right?
I mean, bloodlines changed forever.
So it's definitely one of those things, especially when you're in the moment, you're on that mission, and you go, man, there's no doubt we just saved that person, and it wasn't always in the realm of hostage rescues. Definitely a lot of those, that I look at and I go, yeah, had we not acted or had we not done something, this could have been very, very different. And even on a lot of those hostage rescues, it doesn't necessarily mean that it came to a tactical resolution, meaning that we had to go in and, do what we needed to do on the inside of that structure. Oftentimes it was a negotiation arm of things too, so, hey, we did a great job in talking this person out of what it was that they were doing and coming to that peaceful resolution. But there's, we talked about barricade situations. Those were a huge role for us being on the team, more so than the hostage rescue. I mean, we typically dealt with around 75 tactical missions a year. Those are barricades where, somebody's committed a crime. That's a lot to come out. It is a lot. Mm-hmm. And you look at how those are resolved and the extent that the team goes through to not have to take somebody's life. Mm-hmm. The measures that we take to come to that peaceful resolution. And oftentimes, I mean, there was a lot of incidents where we would have been absolutely justified in shooting this person.
And those videos never make the internet, right?
And the determination was made, hey, this is not the route that we're going. We're going to do X, Y, and Z to accomplish it. Those are definitely the moments where you're like, yeah, we could have absolutely justified in the realm of things doing that, but it didn't happen. And because we took other steps, this person who was in a moment of crisis, right? Look, oftentimes these are not career criminals. They're just sometimes
they're lowest.
They may not even be a criminal. They're just having a bad day and things escalate.
Breakdown,
right?
panic attack.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you look at it from that aspect of things. I mean, those are the ones you walk away from and you're like, that was great.
Well, and
that was great.
We've all had those bad days where you're like, I'm glad there's not a camera on me, or this, nobody's seeing me at my worst, right?
Yeah.
So you were able to have sympathy for those individuals.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
You have to. Not that you need to put yourself in their shoes, but you have to be able to take a step back and look at it from a global perspective rather than just through that microscope.
Yeah. So I know you've been asked and talked about the October 1 shooting ad nauseum, and it's something that I'm sure comes with an emotional cost. We don't want any of this conversation to be sensationalized or unnecessarily cause you, to relive something you don't want to relive. But Ash did want to ask you a specific question that perhaps you haven't been asked before.
Yeah. So when we think about how October 1 changed our community and knowing all the facts of what happened, you're walking through the doors of that hotel room. I want to ask you, without going into any sensational topics, how did that experience change you fundamentally?
I think when after everything kind of calmed down, the dust settled, with the way things kind of unfolded that night, there was no question in my mind that the possibility of us making entry into that room and coming out the same way that we went in, and I've said this before, meaning that like there was a very high potential for us to get killed.
By an explosive or a booby trap or a gun.
Well, yeah, if you look at the how things unfolded, obviously I ended up on that 32nd floor, and won't bore you with all the details of how I got there because it's a long story. But we came up through that stairwell, and when we opened the door that he ended up he had drilled the door shut basically to prevent anybody from coming up through that stairwell. We open the door, and the first thing we see is a room service cart. And I don't know how intimately familiar you are with the story, but there were wires coming off the cart. There's not a room service cart in town that is electronic, right? So immediately my thought was, okay, this is an IED, just based off of the situation that was going on. So that was the first incident, like, okay, this is a bomb.
Did you think in that instant that you may have triggered the bomb simply then the fact that you laid eyes on it and now it was only a matter of time?
There's several possibilities when it comes to IEDs, right? It can be photosensitive, meaning that the light changes on it and it could initiate, right? It could...
That sensitive. They can be that sensitive.
It could have motion sensing capability, right?
Wow.
So something triggers it via motion that walks past it, could initiate. But also, the worst case scenario is it's remote activated, meaning that somebody's got a switch and then they're probably going to hit the switch. There was definitely concern. I mean, I remember talking to one of the officers that was with me, and I said, hey, I need you to lay down on the ground and I need you to look up underneath this cart to see if there's any type of explosive material or, compound or whatever the case is. And the linens were draped over relatively far, almost down to where the wheels were. So there wasn't a whole lot to see. And I know there's pictures on the internet of that particular cart. But we didn't know what we didn't know. Right. But my thought was, okay, yeah, somebody in this room they have the potential for initiating this device. And then, that's kind of the first incident. You're like, okay, the reality is that we're probably not going to make it out of this. Just given the circumstances. And then when you start looking and hearing the totality of everything that was happened or had happened down at the concert venue and the casualties that were being reported.
Are you hearing this in real time?
Yeah. So because of, I was working that night, but had just gotten done with work and I was responding from home. So obviously as things played out, for the 11 minutes where he was shooting, we got the call, a matter of me getting in my truck, driving from, Summerlin, where I lived at the time, down Russell to as fast as I could to get to the venue. Wow. And then hearing the officers, they actually said specifically, the floor at Mandalay Bay, they said the room number, they said that, hey, we had a security officer that had been shot. And that's where I just made the decision, hey, this is where I'm going, because we're hearing all of the reports coming in, but this was the only one place that we had any viable information of where somebody was at. Like, we had all these other reports of potential suspects at, within the concert area, but nobody had been able to say, yes, that's definitive. So that's why I ended up, there on the 32nd floor. but obviously opening that first door from the stairwell and seeing that what we thought was an IED, we're like, okay, the reality is we're probably not coming out of this.
Did you feel sad at all? Like, oh, I might not see my kids ever again or my wife again? Or do you not have
You know what? Honestly, yeah, at least to my recollection, you didn't even think about it, right? We had a job to do that was a possibility. I'm not going to stay focused on that potential possibility. I'm going to look at what we need to do. So, that was the first instance where like, okay, this is not good. And the initial plan for me was to get into this position, and then, I knew that the rest of the SWAT guys were coming. I just happened to be the first one that made it there, at least onto the 32nd floor. By the time I got to the area, the shooting had stopped. So we had not heard any shooting at that point. I didn't know how many people were in that room, what the situation was in the room. But as we kind of tried to take a step back, we're like, okay, we're in a good containment position right now. Let's try and slow things down. I had, there was 10 officers in that stairwell with me.
Were you the only SWAT officer?
Yes, I was the only SWAT officer in the stairwell.
So did that automatically make you sort of take this leadership role?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no doubt. When SWAT shows up to something, we definitely assume that responsibility.
So you're leading.
You start making those tactical decisions for sure. So, looking at that, trying to slow things down a little bit because we hadn't heard any shooting coming from the room. Thinking, all right, there's going to be more SWAT officers on the way. I know the rest of the team is coming because I heard them all on the radio saying, hey, I'm on my way. But then things started to kind of progress on the radio. That's when, we had 22,000 concert goers there, right? What happens to 22,000 people when they're running for their lives? They go wherever they can.
Chaos.
What you don't realize is they're running for their lives. And now as they're starting to work their way into other hotel properties, you have patrons in those hotel properties that are going, hey, what is going on out here? You got people walking in the door with gunshot wounds. They're running over things that are causing noise.
Ash and I had people that we represented who their injuries were not from being shot. They were throwing themselves over a 20-foot wall,
And trample.
not knowing if in the next few seconds they might be shot and breaking their leg, spraining their ankle, trampled.
Yeah, a lot of trample injuries. Just people trying to vacate the area, right? I mean, that's a human response. So what that did though was it started to generate calls where people were observing all these people running in with gunshot wounds and injuries, and they're saying, hey, there was an active shooter at New York. There's this going on at MGM.
And they don't know.
Tropicana, right? And they don't know because they're just sitting there having a good time, gambling, whatever. And then all of a sudden a flood of people come in with injuries.
Not knowing they might have run a half block.
So literally as I'm up in that stairwell, we start to hear these calls come out of the radio. And there's like 7 different reports of active shooter here. We have hostages being held at New York. Yeah, it was pretty
So
wild.
the scale, you didn't know how big or small.
And so, obviously we get debriefs on a lot of different types of incidents. And, one of the incidents that had happened internationally was the terrorist attack on Mumbai. And that was that cell structure where they were hitting multiple locations at different times in some type of, organized pattern. So that was my thought. I'm like, okay, this is a Mumbai style attack. And immediately, I'm thinking to myself, there's no way anybody else is coming here, right? I would imagine that the rest of the SWAT officers are probably getting in trucks and they're going to all these other different incidents that we're having reports at. So, that started to kind of surface, and I made the decision. I'm like, we've got to go. Like, we need to deal with this problem here, whatever it may be, because we have all these other things that are going on. And that's when, I put together the explosive charge that I was carrying with me, and got on the phone because I couldn't get on the radio because there was so much radio traffic. Got on the phone with my SWAT commander, said, hey, I have a team. We're up here on the 32nd floor. This is what we have. I'm going to make entry. And he's like, okay, you have what you need? I'm like, yep, I've got a team of like 12 up here. He goes, all right, get it done.
Wow.
So, that first incident, looking at that room service cart, you're like, okay, this is not a good situation. And then now we've got to go up to the door that he has shot through, I think 35 times.
Oh, geez.
And put an explosive breach on the door. And it is not as easy as they make it look on the movies, where you just go up, you're like,
Boom, blow it off, run in. Yeah.
There are types of charges that will do that, but with some of the stuff that we carry, it's very linear in the fact that you have to extend it all the way up and down the door, depending on what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
And it's time consuming. It's not walking up to the door and just going,
slap
click,
it on.
it's done. You're up there for a decent amount of time.
And the real fear is that you have no idea what's on the other side of this door.
And you're in the line
You
of
have no idea.
potential.
And you're thinking about your field training, and you're hearing other things on the radio.
And my mindset at that time was like, okay, hey, we've got to go. We've got to get it done. And you honestly, you didn't think about it. I mean, there was no thought about it. As I started to hang that charge on the door, I was like, okay, my daughter's getting married in 6 days. Sorry.
Take your time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still, obviously can be emotional, but so yeah, I hang that charge on the door, and I'm like, okay, my daughter's getting married in 6 days. I gotta be there.
You had that thought.
Yeah. By the grace of God, yeah, I was there. So, but when you go through incidents like that in life, where you're kind of met with the potential, that potential consequence, how does that not change you, right?
Yeah.
Is it more than just you get a new lease on life? You now have this perspective that most of us will never, we can watch it played out in movies and read about it, but we don't, because is it like the whole, until you have a kid, you don't know what it's like, until you really are looking death square in the face and go, I might not be here in a couple of seconds. So there's no doubt. I mean, you can't go through something like that and go, yeah, because not appreciative, right? But so we hang the charge on the door, and that's another. I'm thinking, okay, well, all right, we're not going to make it out of this. That was the thought process, because based on what we were being told over the radio of what had happened, I'm honest. I'm thinking
This is like a highly
I'm thinking there's like
calculated
3 to 5 people inside this room. You just don't know, right?
Well, can I ask you this? Had you had 10 SWAT officers, and this is nothing against non-SWAT police, but would you have felt different and more confident? Was it like you're leading this band of individuals that don't have your level of training?
Listen, there's no doubt on that. I absolutely would have felt a lot more comfortable. I had 2 canine officers that were with me up there, or a canine sergeant and a canine officer, and they go through, they basically go through a SWAT school. So they have some type of training, but they also go on pretty much every mission we go on. So they see the movements, they understand it, as opposed to, I had patrol officers, I had detectives from different units, and I didn't even know who these guys were.
Yeah, no relationship.
And Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department is a big agency. Unfortunately, you can't know everybody. And the people that happened to just arrive with me that night, I didn't know any of them. So I didn't know what their backgrounds were. I didn't know their capabilities. Some of them showed up, they had a handgun. A couple of them maybe had rifles, but they certainly weren't equipped like I was equipped, with all the protection and weapons, training, and explosives, and ballistic helmet and things like that. So yeah, would I have been comfortable with having the rest of my guys up there? Absolutely. Absolutely. And it definitely would have changed probably how I determined to move inside that room, for sure. Because I didn't know what their capabilities were. I had a discussion with them before we actually initiated that explosive breach. And I said, listen, this is what is going to happen. We're going to blow the door. We're going to just take a minute and pause, because I believe that if we blow that door and somebody's in there, they're probably going to start shooting rounds at that door, right? We don't want to be in front of that door when that happens. So we're going to give it a moment to breathe, and then you 5 are coming in with me. We had 5 or 6 more other officers that were right there. I said, you guys will be the second wave. In the event that we go in and we just get mowed down, oh my gosh, you guys will come in after the fact. So, we went through what we needed to do. We had some short pre-planning, just nice and quick, and we blow the door. Obviously didn't get a response. Fortunately it was just one person who had killed himself in the room.
Is there when you go in, is there visibility? Is it smoky?
Yeah. So when we blew the door, we use an explosive called det cord. It's patent, and it has a very unique smell to it. Once you smell it, you're like, oh, okay. Right.
That's what that is.
Yeah. Yeah. Even to this day, I love the smell of that. But obviously the off gases from all the weapons, the shooting that he shot over 1,000 rounds in that room. When you're shooting that many rounds in a confined space, you have a lot of what's called off gas from the gun, that gunpowder that's burning, and you create that gas. When we blew the door, it was just this pungent smell of that off gas. And because we had the window that had been breached too, we're up on the 32nd floor. It was like a wind tunnel. It was like just pushing down the hall. So immediately you're like, okay, this is the right room. We knew we had the right room anyway. We had a room cart that we thought was an IED. We had bullet holes in a door that we had just blown.
Sure.
But when that door came down, and I could smell that, I'm like, okay, all right, we got the right room. Here we go.
And getting mowed down, I mean, that was not a far out. That was a likely thing that could have happened to you. Very likely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially when I started to kind of come out of the stairwell, looking into the room, I could see immediately. I could see the guns all over the room. And we did what we call a slow and methodical approach to it. I didn't want to just take the officers that were with me and just flood into it. I wanted to kind of just take it piece by piece and slow it down. So we did a slow and methodical approach, kind of just cutting it up into pieces and dissecting it through the room. And that's when we realized we had the adjoining room as well that was connected to the main suite, that we ended up blowing that door on and going into that room too.
So I have to imagine that those days must have gone on and on and on. When was Levi putting his head on a pillow after that entire thing happened?
So obviously everybody knows the timeline when that happened. Obviously started, just after 10 p.m. I didn't get home until about 9 a.m. the next day.
And you get home.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Very surreal. So shortly after we cleared the room, we were tasked with clearing the entire hotel, all 3,000 rooms.
Wow.
Yeah. So we meet downstairs, we formulate teams, we start at the first floor. Now keep in mind, it wasn't just Las Vegas Metro SWAT. We had Henderson SWAT show up, we had FBI SWAT there, we had Northtown SWAT with us. So we had a big team, and we just started to just split up responsibilities, starting at the first floor, moving to the second, third, fourth, all the way up to, I think they have, it's labeled the 60th floor. And we cleared the entire hotel that night. Every room.
Jeez.
Just going from room to room to room. So it took a while, obviously, right? But there was concern that we maybe potentially had outstanding suspects, maybe potential victims. We also had a law enforcement officer that was in attendance at the concert that night that was unaccounted for. And they believe maybe he had, jumped into police action and made it over to the hotel. Unfortunately, he was not there. He died as a result of a gunshot wound sustained while he was at the concert. So yeah, we cleared the entire hotel. And, early on when this thing happened, we knew there were victims. It was very preliminary. You could hear stuff on the radio. Hey, I've got a gunshot wound to the head. I've got people down. We didn't know the toll, right?
Yeah.
And it was interesting because we went to the first floor, and I've said this before on other interviews, but when I go and stay at a hotel, when I leave the room, I always turn the TV on. It's just kind of a security measure for me. Like if somebody's going to try and get into that room,
Well, a few other notes I need to
yeah, so
jot down.
Just leave the TV on.
leave the TV on because it gives them the impression that somebody's in the room,
Smart,
right?
yeah.
So you leave the TV on, and whatever the last channel was that you're watching, it just, if somebody
Crank it up.
tries to break into your room, it leaves them the impression that you're in the room. So we started to clear these rooms, and a lot of people had left their TV on. And you're starting to go into these rooms that have all, country western wear, and you're like, okay, these people are at the concert.
Yeah.
And, not to get into political sides or anything else, but, it's a country concert, a festival, probably a lot more leaning on the right side, watching Fox News or whatever news channel. And so I kept seeing Fox News on all of these TVs. And then, it started out was like 5 reported dead. And then you start to go up the floors
You're cleaning the room.
as you're clearing.
This isn't how you're learning about
They're
it.
starting to get more. All right. It's at 11. All right. Wow. 11, and then we're going up, and, now we're, at 15, and it's just climbing and climbing and climbing. And then, obviously we didn't even understand that we were at the number we were at even that night, that morning.
Yeah.
We knew it was bad. But we didn't really have an appreciation for how bad it was.
Okay, so you get home. Do you lay down? Do you sleep? What do you think?
I did. Yeah. I slept for about an hour. Yeah. I slept for about an hour.
Did your daughter get married?
She did?
She did. What was it here?
I was in Utah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What is the juxtaposition of feeling like you might die, seeing and hearing all of that death, and then celebrating life 5 days later?
I was incredibly grateful, obviously just to be there. Right. Yeah, I mean, it was a lot to absorb in the matter of 6 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've just definitely a sense of gratitude. Obviously for coming out from what we experienced. Like I said, fortunately we found him deceased, and we didn't have anything that happened to us. I was also very fortunate that I never actually made it to the concert venue, because, I talked to officers that came out of that afterward, and, just the scene itself was just horrific. So I also felt very blessed in not having to deal with that from that kind of mental capacity. But yeah, it's almost like we got done. Obviously we were on kind of a high alert. We're still trying to filter through things and figure out what happened. We ended up going right back to work the next day.
Jeez.
And then, we go to the wedding, obviously very, very incredibly grateful to be in the position that I was. But it was definitely a whirlwind. Like,
Yeah.
there were so many things going on, and
Were you despondent a little bit? Like,
yeah, it was very surreal, just kind of going through all of that. And, you kind of get put on this pedestal. Like, we just did a job. Like, we did what we were supposed to do. And it's just very odd, going through all that stuff. And then November 7th, obviously, a month and a week or so after, we're on a call out, and I won't go into the details of it, but I get involved in a shooting with a suspect, and obviously because of your involvement in the shooting, you get put on admin leave, So part of that process when you're involved in a shooting is getting put on that admin leave, and then you have to go see a therapist, right, to kind of talk about things. And it was during the course of that particular call, it was a pretty crazy call. The guy basically shot at me and my partner about 12 times. We were fortunate then, ultimately had to return fire and do what we needed to do. But I get to this therapist appointment, having just gone through this shooting, and I remember going in there and talking to him. He's like, "Oh, why are you here?" Just kind of the
no big deal.
Yeah.
Let me just run through the list.
So tell me why you're here. And he goes, well, he knows why I'm there.
Yeah.
Come on. But he's just, that's the way he kind of opens it up. And I'm like, well, I'm here because, obviously I get involved in a officer involved shooting and X, Y, and Z. And here I am. And he's like, all right, what else is going on in your life? And I was like, well, it's been an interesting couple of months. Obviously with 1 October, I was intimately involved in that, and start to tell him the story. And he's like, all right, we need to talk about that.
He knew.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. He definitely knew, because there was, still some emotional things that I was kind of contending with, that I was just like, I'm good. Put it to the side. Yeah, I'm fine. Whatever. Trying to maintain that tough mental,
push it down,
Do you think that opened up Pandora's box?
Get very good at compartmentalizing things in a little box and just kind of tucking it away and don't need to deal with it, right? But I go in there and he kind of opened my eyes to it. He's like, okay, we definitely need to dig into this and talk about it. And, not that I'm saying that it was a blessing that I got involved in this other shooting,
but it forced you.
But yeah, it did. It put me in a position where I had to speak to somebody. And it, definitely was for the better for me, having to go through that and deal with that, and even kind of expand on that therapy even a little bit more. But yeah, just interesting how things kind of unfold sometimes, and for what reasons.
Well, and that leads directly into the question we ask all of our guests, which is, do you feel that looking back, everything in your life led you to that moment? I mean, was that defining moment where you just thought,
no,
my training?
I know I've been asked this before, but that was one incident. Yes, as horrific as it was, that incident does not define me. Sure, does it have some way of shaping me? Yeah, absolutely. But it doesn't necessarily define my career. It doesn't define who Levi Hancock is. It definitely has its position there, but it's not a defining role. I mean, listen, I was put in a position, and I had been given some incredible training by, people who brought me up to the team. And we just did what we needed to get done. Yeah, we were fortunate that he had shot himself and we didn't have to get in a gunfight. But however, there was times where I thought after the fact, I'm like, man, I wish we would have had the opportunity to kill this guy. As harsh as that may sound.
Yeah.
That was one of the things I was like, I wish he would not have taken this coward's way out, but it doesn't define who I am. When I look at my law enforcement career and my time in SWAT, being on the team, that defines what my career was. Not just that one particular incident.
There's very little good that could come out of a situation like that. But if you are from Las Vegas. I am too. And you were witness to the way that our community rallied together
Amazing.
afterwards.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. It was, I kind of touched on it a little bit, but because of this role, right, that I had, you kind of got put on this pedestal, which was very difficult, in a lot of different dynamics that I won't necessarily go into, and is why it was kind of difficult for me. But I was very fortunate because of that role to see a lot of that firsthand, right? It was amazing to see the outpouring of support within this community and how people just rallied. I remember seeing on the news the line to give blood. It was damn near a mile long, and people were waiting. Like, no, let's do this. It was amazing to see how this, I always talk about small town Vegas, because if you're from here, you spend any amount of time here. I mean, I've been here for 30 plus years now, and you can't go to the store without running into somebody, right? Or you meet somebody, they're like, oh yeah, I know so-and-so.
What's happening?
It's small town Vegas. And it became smaller, right? So close knit. And the reality was too, is that if you're a local here, you knew somebody that was some way affected by this.
Either
I had coworkers that, their kids were there. Their kids got shot. I mean, one of the guys on the SWAT team, his son was at the concert and was calling him, and he's trying to do dad duty and do what he needs to on the SWAT team. As he's on the phone, and I know there's body worn camera coverage of him on the phone, with his son as he's going through Mandalay Bay. So if you were local here, you knew somebody that was some way involved in it.
Yeah. Looking back at throughout your entire career, we're attorneys on accident because we kind of feel like we became attorneys on accident. We're podcasters now on accident.
There you go.
But, looking at the very storied ways that our lives unfold, especially one as sensational as you, do you feel like you're SWAT officer on accident?
I wouldn't say on accident. I think the way things unfolded for me, and I remember telling my guys this, some of my guys this before I left, we need to look at, as we're in positions like, I was in SWAT, and even in the current role that I'm in now, we always need to be mindful of who's going to take our position. Right. And, whatever you may be doing, whether it's your law firm or, where I'm at now or where I was at on the team, I always had that mindset of like, okay, who's going to take my position when I'm gone? And am I preparing them for that? And I think I just got into a fortunate position to be in the right place at the right time, maybe by accident. And I met Bob Montez, and he kind of opened my mind to that potential of me going to SWAT. And it lit a fire in me that could not be quenched. And once I achieved that, I gave that everything that I possibly could. I gave it everything. And I loved every minute of what I did. It was such a phenomenal experience to be on that team and just do the work that we got to do day in and day out. I talk about some of the guys that are on the team now that are like, obviously younger generation, they're like my kids, but they're my brothers, and I was very fortunate to be a part of that, for sure.
Well, that's awesome that you loved it, but that doesn't mean it wasn't without its sacrifices and costs. So thank you. Ash and I, thank you for sharing this time, but sharing your story and, thank you for serving. We can't stay safe without people like you. And I think it's a very easy thing to forget about when times are great and easy and there's no tragedy, but, certainly without people like you, we wouldn't be safe. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on.
Appreciate it.